Have you ever walked into a room and someone's watching a movie you've never seen before, and yet you can quote every single line that's being spoken, and it drives you crazy because it sounds like the script was a first draft and never polished, and the dialogue is so cliche that you could quote it without knowing it? Is this just me? Am I the only one who has experienced this? I really hope not. But dialogue is hard. I'm not gonna lie and say that dialogue is easy, that writing really good, strong dialogue is simple and comes naturally. It's hard, it takes work, and when it's wrong, people notice. But when it's right, oh, those are some of the most memorable moments. Take these on, for example. I don't know half of you half as well as I should like, but I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve. I don't go looking for trouble, trouble usually finds me. Good soldiers follow orders. These are three very different memorable pieces of dialogue from three very different franchises, and they all have this different emotional resonance. You have Bilbo simultaneously mocking his audience while confusing them. You have Harry, who's talking back to his professor like, hey, I'm not trying to cause problems, it just happens. And then you have the clone soldier Tup, right on the cusp of executing Order 66 before he's supposed to. These three lines all hit differently, they are all memorable, and if you've seen them or heard them before, they'll stick with you. We want your dialogue to be just as memorable and just as strong. One of you asked for dialogue help, so let's break this down. So I find it prudent to ask the question, what is dialogue? Duh, we all know what dialogue is, but for the sake of this video, let's actually describe it. So dialogue is going to be everything that is in those quotes on the page. Dialogue is how your character expresses themselves out loud. Thoughts can be considered as dialogue, but that is another topic for another day because writing a character's internal monologue and their thoughts is going to be different than writing dialogue. The big key difference is one is unfiltered and one is heavily filtered. So we're talking about what's spoken out loud today. So when should you address dialogue? At what point during the writing process should you even be worried about making dialogue better? It's in your revisions. If you've not finished your first draft yet, pause this video and come back later once you have finished the draft. Trying to focus on making your dialogue perfect and snappy while you're in the middle of trying to figure out your story is like trying to paint walls on a house before you've built it yet. Dialogue is a polish. You finalize dialogue in the later parts of your revision process. So if you've not finished your draft, go ahead and finish that. Don't worry if your dialogue sounds cliche or if characters are saying every emotion that they intend. That's perfectly fine for a rough draft because that'll help you refine later. Your draft is done, you're in the midst of revisions, and now you're doing that nice little polish to make your dialogue really sharp. So how do we make your dialogue better? Well, the first thing is practice. I know, rocket science, right? Practice makes improvement. It's obvious, but it needs to be said. You're only going to get better at writing dialogue as you write dialogue. Your third book is going to sound a lot better than your first book. Next is to know your characters. Good dialogue comes in later revisions primarily because that's when your character arcs are solidified, when you know their motives, when you know their goals, when you know what they're after, when you know how they act and react to situations and to people, and when you know how they interact with very specific different characters. Here's an example from my current work in progress. One of my side characters is very honest, very true to himself. He is himself in whatever circumstance he's in. He doesn't change. One thing that does change with him, though, is how he speaks. So when he's with nobility, he speaks like a noble. He sounds like a noble, but when he's with people that he's close to, when he's with his friends, when he's comfortable, his accent starts slipping out. So why does this happen? Well, as I'm rewriting my story and as I'm learning more about my characters, I realize this character is separated from most of the high nobility most of the time. He isn't among all the high social classes all the time. He spends a lot more time with his people than he does with other socialites. He spends a lot more time with his people than he does with other nobility. So when he's comfortable, he starts sounding more like what's familiar to him than this higher society. And this accent didn't start coming out until my fifth or sixth pass through certain scenes with this character. Why? Because I knew him better. I knew the other characters in the scene better. I knew my main character better, and I knew how they would interact better. The more time you spend with your characters, the more you understand them, the better your dialogue will be. This is why we edit dialogue towards the end of the revision process, and we don't worry about dialogue while we're drafting. Let your dialogue sound cliche while you're drafting. It's fine. You'll fix it later. Next key to writing better dialogue is to know your characters' relationships. People talk differently to different people. When people are comfortable, as with my previous example, they may start to sound different. They'll say things differently. They may be more honest, less formal with those that they trust. They may not harbor as many secrets with those that they trust. When you are writing dialogue and you're having a conversation between two strangers and your main character has a secret that they need to tell somebody, but they don't know who to trust, are they just gonna blab it to the world? I really hope not, because then you would have us going, that's stupid. Why are you being dumb? You shouldn't have said that. You'll have the Hagrid, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said that. So your characters' relationships and knowing those relationships are going to heavily influence your dialogue. How do they speak when they're around people that they know? How do they speak when they're around complete strangers? How do they speak around people they know they can't trust? If you have a weasel of a character that's trying to mine information and your main character doesn't trust them, your main character should keep their mouth shut and not give them an inch to pull off of. So knowing your relationships makes your dialogue better. Also, know your characters' flaws and fears. What topics are your characters not wanting to breach? What are topics that your main character doesn't want talked about? What are they insecure about? What do they avoid? What subjects do they change the subject to when it's brought up? If it's a fear, does this make them sound weak? Why won't they talk about this? If someone is talking about being good at archery and your main character's like, I should be really good at archery, but I suck. Hey, instead of going to practice archery, let's practice fencing instead. That fear plays into your character's dialogue, and it's going to shift how they speak. Because when you're insecure about something, you don't want that insecurity to be hit. So you either avoid it or you play it up so that you're in control of how much pain you go through instead of other people. That's what your characters are going to be doing. If the conversation touches on something that's wounded your characters, they don't want to talk about it. So you need to ask yourself, what hurts your characters? What insecurities do your characters have? What are topics they avoid? And then do they deflect those topics? Do they use humor to ham up those topics so that it's more funny and doesn't actually hit the main problem? Do they completely change the subject? Do they claim it so that they're claiming what hurts them instead of other people being able to use that as fodder against them? Knowing your character's flaws, knowing their fears, knowing what has hurt them in the past, knowing what conversations they want to avoid is going to be crucial in how you handle dialogue. Knowing how your character handles conflict is also going to play very heavily into your dialogue. How does your character handle conflict? Are they avoidant? Do they attack it? This isn't just physically, this is in conversations. If someone says, hey, I think you're a liar, does your character try to change the subject? Does your character go, yeah, I'm a liar, you shouldn't trust me? How does your character handle conflict? What aren't they willing to engage in? What battles aren't they willing to fight? And what kind of stakes would make them break the silence and actually speak truthfully in that matter? If your character is a very bad archer, but you are writing a scene where someone confronts them about that and they need to have a genuine conversation, what must be spoken? What must be said to make that character overcome his insecurity and actually talk about his shortcomings? So, knowing your characters is crucial to writing good, memorable, fun dialogue. Knowing how your characters interact with other people, knowing what your character wants and what they're willing to sacrifice and do in order to get their desire is hugely important, not just for dialogue, but for your story overall. And all of these questions that I said, everything that I've mentioned, this isn't like must make a list and ask every single one of these questions as you're editing your dialogue. That's way too much. But it's meant to give you a gist of a deeper understanding of your characters. Maybe it would be helpful for you to list all of these things out and answer these questions and have it sitting next to you while you write. Maybe it comes more intuitive to you. So as you practice, as you keep writing dialogue, as you keep writing more stories, your dialogue is just going to get better. Scenes that I write off the cuff today are a whole lot better sounding than when I was 12 writing my first book. It was not good, my friends. It was not good. But with time, you'll keep getting better. With time, your dialogue will develop and get stronger. Remember, if you don't know your character, your dialogue probably won't work very well. And one other tip is to listen to people. Pay attention to those around you. Listen to how people speak. Listen to how people's delivery changes when they're just kind of listening to a conversation versus a topic shows up that they actually enjoy. How do people joke with each other? Is it fun and jovial? Do their jokes hurt? Are people subtly superior to those around them? What kind of language, what kind of posture do people have when they're talking down to someone, even if it is subtle? What words do they say? What's their tone? Dissect the world around you and dissect conversations that you have, conversations that you overhear. And this is also going to really help you write better dialogue because it'll give you a good idea of what other people sound like. Watch good movies, read good books, study good dialogue, and it will only help you. And remember, subtext is also king. The biggest way to improve your dialogue is use subtext, my friends. People don't say what they mean. People don't say what they want. People don't state their true feelings. If your character walks up to his friend and goes, I think I'm a terrible archer, and that really hurts, and I don't know what to do with these feelings because it makes me feel like I'm useless or whatever. Who talks like this? Unless it's like a huge confrontation leading up to someone saying, yeah, I feel useless because I'm not a good archer. That is a lot more realistic than someone just waltzing up to their friend and gushing everything in their heart and all of their insecurities. People don't talk like this. Great moments of dialogue are when people are talking about not what they're talking about. When they're talking about one thing, but they're really talking about something else. So when characters are saying everything that they mean and everything that they feel and nothing is shadowed at all, I call this the first draft dialogue because it sounds like a rough draft. And there are many circumstances where I've walked into a room to a movie I've never seen before and I can quote the scene that's happening because it sounds like a rough draft, because there's no subtext added, because there's no depth added. And this is the kind of thing we want to fix with your story. So what is subtext? Subtext is the meaning beneath the words. What are the characters truly talking about? In my current work, I have two characters talking about this old decrepit bow up on the wall. And one of the characters is saying his father threw it out, but it was a family heirloom, so he went and he retrieved it. The subtext of this scene, what these characters are talking about, is not the bow. They're talking about the guy. The guy lives apart from his family. He's been ostracized as much as possible while keeping up appearances. So while the two characters are talking about archery and talking about this discarded family heirloom, they're actually talking about one of the characters. This is what subtext looks like. This is what can make your scenes hit so much harder, is what is actually being said under what is being said. It is a form of symbolism. Your audience is smart. They can put these things together. Even subconsciously, if they're not aware of what's actually happening, they can feel the difference between what is being stated and what is being meant. So when you're actually going in to revise your dialogue, some practical steps is read it out loud. Is it awkward? Is it clunky? Well, then change it. What's everyone's goal in their scene? What are your characters willing to divulge? What are your characters not? And what would get them to actually divulge those things in this scene? Does it happen? Does it not? That's up to you. That's up to what the scene needs. What are they willing to keep hidden? Do they feel safe to speak honestly? Writing good dialogue takes practice, and it's probably not going to sound very good for most of your project, and that's okay. The best stories aren't written, they are rewritten and rewritten and rewritten. In my current work, there is a debate scene that I have rewritten half a dozen times, and each time the dialogue hits so much stronger because I know what my characters want more now, and I know what lines they're willing to cross and what they're not willing to cross. So as I've known my characters better, the dialogue has gotten better. The more you know your characters, the better your dialogue is going to be. And do you have a writing question? Drop it in the comments below. Is there a topic you want me to cover in a video? I would love to hear from you. And if you want more tips on writing dialogue, the do's and don'ts of writing dialogue, check out this video right over here.